Hi, I'm George Maestri, and today we're going to take a look at tires. We're going to build a car or a truck tire that has treads. Now, a lot of people who model complex things such as this kind of wonder, how do you get the treads all the way around the tire? Well, it's pretty simple. What you do is you create one copy of that pattern and then you array it around the tire. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to start off with a simple object. I'm going to start off with a polygon plane. And I'm going to go over to my attribute editor, and we need to make this a very specific size. So I'm going to kind of dial up my settings here. But what I really want is I want it to make it, say, about 8 wide and about 10 high. And I'm going to go ahead and move that back a little bit and up so we can see this. And then we also need to control the detail. Now, this is how we are going to be modeling our tread, so we need enough detail here. So I'm going to actually dial this up to, say, 16 subdivisions in width and 20 in height. And so what that does is it gives me a pretty square rectangular pattern there that I can use. Now I'm just going to start free-form modeling a simple tread pattern. Now, if you want, you can create as complex or as simple of a tread pattern as you want. But the one rule is that it needs to line up at this end and this end. So the two ends of it have to line up so that way the pattern can repeat. So I'm going to make this a little easy, and I'm going to start with some faces here in the middle. So I'm going to select this row of faces here and this one here. And then we can just extrude it. So I'm going to hit Control E to extrude. And then just bring that up. So that gives me kind of like a little bit of a tread. And then if we want, we can start to do something a little bit more complex. We could draw a pattern from one end to the other. And again, I'm just kind of free-forming this because this is really just kind of for demonstration purposes. So there's another sort of pattern, and I can, again, extrude that. So what I'm doing here is by extruding this, I'm getting that pattern kind of indented into the bottom of this. And we could do something similar on this side as well. So I can do a couple of tread patterns here. And you kind of get the idea of what I'm doing here. So I'm really just starting to extrude and create a tread pattern for this tire. And go ahead and extrude that. Now, one of the things is that when I start extruding this, I am getting these little end caps here. So I need to make sure I get rid of those. So I'm going to go ahead and select those and delete them, because what I want is an open edge here, and that's how this is all going to join together. And then on this side, I'll do the same. Now this is just the bottom of the tire. We still have the sides of the tire that we can work with. So what we can do is we can select some edges maybe. So I could select this edge here and then double click on this edge. Shift select this edge, double click on this edge as well, and move those up. And so this kind of starts to create the edge of the tire. And if we want, we could extrude those edges. So bring those up a little bit. And this will start to create the edge of the tire. And let's go ahead and do one more of those. And there we go. So now that we have this, this is just one little section of our tire. Now, one of the reasons I created this at a very specific length is because I want to duplicate this using duplicate array. So I'm going to select this object and go into Edit, Duplicate Special. And I'm going to look at the options for this. So what we want to do is we want to copy it, and in this case, I'm actually going to copy it with an instance, and you'll see why in just a second. And then we can translate this. Well, this is facing along the blue or the Z axis, so I want to translate this 10 units. Now remember, this is 10 units long, so when I translate that, it'll translate very evenly. And then I can create as many copies as I want. I'm going to actually create 7 copies, which will give me a total of 8 sections around the rim of the wheel. And once I do that, I'm just going to select Duplicate Special. And what this does is it basically just takes that tread and it lengthens it. Now, if I want, I can go to my original object and say go into vertex mode and watch what happens. If I start to move vertices around, because these are instanced, I can actually affect all of the other treads. So if I want to kind of modify this a little bit, I can actually modify the master one of these, and all of these children will go ahead and follow along. Now, once I get my treads modeled exactly the way I want, I still have separate objects. So this is actually 8 separate objects. If we looked at this in the outliner, you'd see we have our original plane plus 7 more. And I want to combine these into one object. So all I have to do is select all of them and then just do Mesh Combine. What that does is it combines all of those into one object. But it does not stitch together the vertices. So if I were to, say, select faces on this, you could see that these are still separate objects. And I don't want that. I want all of this to be welded together. So we can do that just by doing what's called Merge Vertices. So I'm going to go ahead and go into vertex mode, select all the vertices in here, and just do Edit Mesh, Merge. And the default threshold should apply just fine for this. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Enter, and then just go back into object mode. And that should be now one object with everything stitched together. So now that I have this, I need to still make my tire. Well, we can do that by deforming this. And probably the easiest way to do it is by using a bend deform. So I'm going to stay in my modeling toolkit, go under Deform, Nonlinear Bend. And what this does is it creates what's called a bend deformer. So here in the channel box, I've got the options for this. I have my curvature, which I can bring up to, say, 180, which basically makes it a loop. But this doesn't really do anything to this. But what we can do is we can actually start to change this. As you can see, as I rotate this, it starts to modify it. So what I want to do is rotate this 90 degrees in X and 90 degrees in Z. Now this will depend upon what axis you actually modeled this on, and because I modeled this along the Z, these are the two I need to rotate. And there we go. So now I've got pretty close to a tire. But if you can also see, I've got my normals flipped. So I'm going to select my object, do Mesh Display, Reverse, and now you can see I've got my treads and I've got my tire. Now, because I bent that into shape, I still have one more seam to deal with. And so I still need to sew up the top vertices. So I'm going to go ahead and select these vertices towards the top, and the seam is right here at the very top here. And then just do another Edit Mesh, Merge. And now that we have this, we should have our tire. Now we can continue to model on this tire if we want. I can double click this inner edge here, shift double click this one here, and this will tell you if you've merged everything because these edges should be open edges. And then I can extrude those. So go ahead and do a nice extrude. And maybe a scale. And now, as you can see, I can start to create my tire. Now I can also do fun things such as insert an edge loop here or something like that and move that detail out. So again, I can continue to model on this as I go. But as you can see, it's very simple to create a complex structure such as a tire by using Duplicate Special and the Bend Deformer.